All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I hope everybody is doing well tonight. I am certainly doing better than I was last week. But yeah, we're back. We're going to go over. I guess I don't really have that much to go over in terms of things that were done off stream. I did do a lot of stuff off stream, but not a lot of it warrants like in depth going over. So I'll briefly touch on those things you can see here I've got on the Git log. We'll touch on that here in a minute. But before we do that, I do want to just take a quick second and thank the supporters of the channel, beginning with our elite partner, Javier Lazaron, followed by our partner, Matt Osgard. Those are the two top tiers of support over on YouTube memberships and Patreon, followed by the list of supporters you see here scrolling past on the screen, rather. Those are a combination of the other tiers of support over on YouTube memberships, Patreon, as well as Twitch subscriptions. So thank you all very, very much for that support. It's greatly appreciated and helps me cover the costs of running this channel and project. Things like software licenses, hosting fees, eventually assets, things of that nature. So thank you guys very much for that. And in addition, I would also like to extend a large thank you to all of you guys, the viewers, whether you're joining us live here on the Twitch side or the YouTube side, or if you're catching the VOD after the fact. I appreciate each and every one of you guys, because without you guys, this channel and this project would not exist. So thank you guys very much for being here. I appreciate you guys, each and every one of you. Seeing you over on YouTube, good to see you. Hello, how are you? Magetsub over on Twitch side, good to see you. Apotham, good to see you as well. Welcome, guys. Hope you guys are doing well. All right, so in terms of things that I did offline, like I said, a lot of it has to do with I guess you could say quality of life improvements, right? So I've been working a lot to get the first time setup experience improved. And I've done a lot of that work on Mac OS and Linux. Obviously, Windows will be following along with that. But essentially, the idea is I want you to be able to essentially clone the repo, run a script. It'll grab whatever dependencies it needs automatically, and then set the project up for you, scaffold things, build the internal utilities automatically, and set you up to be able to run it with as little friction as possible. And that includes generating all of the binary assets and things of that nature. So I've been doing a lot of work offline there. I don't think a lot of that warrants us actually streaming that stuff, because all of that stuff is actually on the Kohi repo in the 0.13 branch. And so if you guys want to have a look at some of that stuff that I've done, it is available there. You can see here most of the things that I've done have to do with that, right? So obviously, before we push out 0.13, we're going to be doing another pass through all of that stuff just to make sure that it all works, so that we can hopefully eliminate some of the long-standing issues and sort of pain points that have been around for quite a while with the project. Doing an extremely boring task of writing the Wayland bindings I need for Odin. Glad I know C. Yeah, I bet. Writing bindings is never fun. Period. I hate doing it. But yeah, you can almost always implement them in C, right? Which is awesome. I didn't realize, well, I guess it would make sense that there'd be no bindings for that, unless somebody's actually written it. Are you planning to open source that? Odin makes writing bindings quite nice. Okay. Odin's on my list of languages to try. It's just, it's not going to happen for this project. If I use a language like that, it's going to be for a future project for sure. Wrote shader C bindings once. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's, if I recall correctly, the shader C API isn't too large in terms of, how much landscape there is. So yeah, I could see doing something like that. Wayland, I think, would be worse, or having to write Vulkan bindings. That would suck. Makes it nice, doesn't make it a fun time. Yeah, fair enough. Totally fair. All right. So what we are going to take a look at tonight is, and I'll just close some things here. Let me pop over to the movement system, because that is where we're keeping our to-do list here at the top of things that we need to do before we move on from this system. So what I want to look at is knocking out some of this stuff, or at least putting a good dent in some of this stuff tonight. So it's going to be, we've got some editor stuff and we've got some scene integration stuff. I think we're going to need to sort of go back and forth on these for a little bit. So I don't think we're going to be working exclusively on one or the other, but at least for the editor, we need some sort of plugin for the grid editing. Now, I put grid editing here. We really ought to have, and I'm actually not even going to call this a plugin. I'm going to call this a integration wow, I can't spell. Integration for or of movement system. And the reason I'm not structuring this as a plugin is because I've done lots of thinking sort of offline about how plugins might look, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. And I haven't fully made a decision on how I want that to come out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend the functionality of the editor using the API that we have with the editor, and just sort of build it out that way. So we're kind of extending the functionality, but not via a plugin. And I think plugins are just going to be something, as far as the editor is concerned, it's going to be something that we're just going to do in the future. But I am going to keep the editor code separate from all of the rest of the stuff. So if and when we get ready to do this as a plugin, it should be fairly simple to move some code around and make that actually work through an official plugin. But having a plugin implies a few other things. It implies that you've got several different entry points. It implies that you have some sort of API that the plugin can interact with, and that would be the only API that the plugin can interact with. It shouldn't have sort of direct access to the editor as we're going to utilize for this. So it's a whole lot of sort of overhead and headache that I don't necessarily want to set up now. I just kind of want to get stuff done, get stuff working, and move on to the next system, because we have a lot of work to do in this game, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on the editor. So with that said, the first thing that we're going to look at tonight is essentially getting an integration of a movement system editor in place. And that's going to start with creating some basic UI controls outside of the core editor in our game logic, and then telling the editor about them and extending the editor in a few ways to allow us to have various user types introduced and things like that. And then from that, we need just a couple of pieces of functionality. So we need essentially a button that regenerates the height info. So that's that bit that we did right before the file format, the binary file format, where we sort of scan the scene and generate the grid based off of that, and come up with what cells are blocked and which ones aren't, and that sort of thing. We just need a button in the editor to sort of say, hey, run that again, and give us a fresh copy of that. And then, we need the logic to manually paint, per se, the per cell properties, right? So we want to say, hey, I want to turn, or I want to paint water tiles, right? Or swim only tiles. And you should be able to select a mode, and as you move the mouse or drag the mouse over tiles, it should turn those things to that particular color, or I want to block this set of tiles, that kind of thing. So we need the ability to do that. We'll probably start off with a single cell at a time, and then if we need to expand that, we can always expand it, but more than likely, that's the way that that's going to work. I also have a note in here that a 2D ortho view might be useful for painting. I don't know that we'll implement that right away. That's probably going to be an extra that I leave in the to-dos for the future. And then we also need a way to manually adjust height. So painting is maybe paint for this too, like more than one cell at a time. Ideally, this would be an exception case. And so this is sort of a way for us to manually be able to say, I want this height set here. And that's in case, sort of this first bit of logic kind of fails or doesn't generate exactly what we want. It gets close, but not 100%. We should be able to, manually adjust that. And then as far as the scene integration goes, and this is where I'm saying we're going to have to bounce back and forth because the regenerating height info should actually take some of this stuff into account. Is we need an entity flag to say this entire entity is a collision entity. So use whatever sort of shape data we have to say, any ray casting or scanning that we do with this, it counts as a collision entity. And so take that into mind. So we need a way to say that. That should be relatively straightforward. I'm not really too worried about that. And then we need a way to filter by collision flagged entities. So it'd be nice to be able to say, give me a list of entities that all have this flag on them, right? And that's for the entire entity. And then we also need a way to auto tag mesh sub-objects that have a particular name. So maybe call dash, whatever it might be. And treat those as collision meshes. And so those would be treated in the same way as an entire entity. And maybe we combine the logic for that under the hood and we just deal with collision meshes under the hood or something like that. And then maybe, instead of giving collision flagged entities, we just have a series of collision meshes which either come from sub-objects of these or one of these collision flagged entities, right? And so we need that to extend how this should work. And the reason that we need that is actually, let me see if I can run this really quickly. I don't know if I've actually broken it or not. I haven't tested that yet. So I've made a few code changes, but I don't think I've done anything that should mess us up too badly. Okay, so I'm going to go into editor mode here for a second, just because we can visualize it a little better. So we can see here that this tree, for example, a lot of the tree's geometry, the leaves and stuff, were caught during the raycasts, right? And so if you look at this path down here, it's very skinny and actually impassable at certain points due to the way that this works, right? So what we would really ideally want is to have some sort of collision geometry included with this tree, or maybe even separately from the tree as a separate entity, right? That we could put around the base, say a cylinder, that we could just essentially put down here and maybe have it just extend up a little bit because that's all we need. And then, maybe only flag the grid squares around that as being blocked instead of this entire thing, right? And so that would be, that's kind of the best example scenario we have there of why we might want that. As far as why we might want to edit the height of a particular thing, we may have a situation like what is happening here. So if we take a look at the way that this collision geometry was generated, because the edge of this cube did not wind up fully being within the raycast that happened for this particular seam that goes along here, it essentially took the terrain instead. And so you can't actually get all the way to the edge here. And so what we may want to do is maybe grab these vertices of this grid and move them up here so that we can actually pass over here and maybe even pass across here. Similar to what has actually happened over here, right? Where it just kind of takes the average of that and rolls with it, right? And so it's little things like that that we're going to need to touch up after we've actually gone through and done the sort of auto generation phase. We need to be able to have the flexibility to do that as well. So that is predominantly what we're going to be working on. We're going to be going back and forth on a lot of this stuff. And essentially what I'm looking to create, at least for right now, is, as we kind of go through these different modes, you can see here that the sort of inspector window kind of changes. So we're going to add another button here, and we're going to do this sort of as a user mode. And we're going to add another button here that gives us a new sort of movement system editor, right? And that's going to spawn open a new panel over here that we can then add controls to, and probably will have multiple modes within that, similar to what we did for the HF terrain, where we've got several sub modes within that, and we can just sort of work based off of that. And so that is that's the goal for tonight. Let's see. Might open source it depending on how complete I make the binding. That's fair. Although even if it's not complete, I would argue that open sourcing it would probably be valuable to somebody anyways, right? Because that'd be a starting point that they could use. Even if you don't ever plan on finishing it, somebody could probably use it. So it might not be a bad thing to open source. Not enjoying my time with Wayland. Why is it so hard to create a simple windowing system? Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. And I've used windowing systems now on, well, I still actually have to put in a Wayland layer in the platform. I'm still using X11 technically, or X Wayland in my case. So, okay. So I think once we have all of these things complete, we'll be in a situation where we can kind of do this other stuff down here, right? I think this Jobify scan navgrid, if I wind up doing that, that's like bottom of the barrel, right? I'm okay with it, at least for now, when I click that button in the editor, if it takes a minute to run, right? It's the editor who cares. I think more important things to move on are probably going to be these guys. So actually, I think I'm going to take this, I'm just going to move this to the bottom of the list, right? Because that's bottom of the barrel in terms of priority. Let's see. So movement code should work with any avatar type. So that's the other thing we're going to have to do is get other avatars in, or other avatar types. So right now we just have a player one. We are going to need NPCs and monsters, both of which can pathfind. So we're going to be doing that at some point. And then, of course, grid cell movement type implementation. This kind of is going to also be in conjunction with the editor stuff that we're doing here. So that may actually move up in priority as well. All right. Let's see. Engineers definitely designed it. It's not simple nor genius, yeah. As with most things operating system-wise. It's really annoying that Odin comes with Win32, X11, and AppKit, although not all of it. You have to make some Objective-C calls, but nothing for Wayland. It's probably a similar situation as I did here. It's just like X11 was easier to get started on. There's more documentation about it. There's not as much on Wayland. So yeah, it's annoying, but I do get it. All right. So with that, how are we going to implement this new sort of editor set mode thingy, or the editor mode? So you can see here I've made some modifications, and this is kind of where I was starting to think about like what we might have a plugin look like. I think I'm going to actually ixnay this for now, because I don't think we're going to do the plugin thing now. We're going to leave that for later. But editor set mode, we have the editor mode, which is a actually, let me check something really quickly. Did we actually? Yeah. So the editor mode is an enumeration, right? So we have a scene, entity tree, HF terrain, and assets, which we haven't actually used yet. So I've extended this to basically say that we've got plenty of room for our sort of core editor modes, right? So anything beyond 255 is going to be considered user space, right? So in this enumeration, we're saying anything from 0 to 254 is going to be sort of core, and then anything beyond that is going to be considered user space. So user space is going to be where we extend the editor via our game code, or maybe in the future via plugins, things like that. And so we can set a mode, and this is kind of how we can let the central editor know, hey, we have this other mode that we're using. I know you don't know anything about it, but this is the particular mode that we're using it. So if we do certain queries on it, we can actually get certain things back. So we have a user space here. The user space itself is not going to be a valid mode, but anything after it will be up until the editor mode max, which I have set to 512, right? We'll never have 512 modes of editing. It's just not going to be the way that it works, and I suspect that this mode thing may be swapped out for something better in the future anyway. But at least for now, that's the way that the 1.0 editor is going to work. So, anything between user space and mode max is free game for end users, right? And we'll just have to, once we open this up so that folks can actually write plugins for this, we'll have to have some sort of system for managing what those modes are and what the codes are available for it. To be able to use, so that we don't have folks trampling one another. So we have that, and then I actually just realized down here, we actually have, wait, let me see something. Yeah, so down here, I think I saw that we didn't actually change the editor mode to be the correct type. So right now we still have it as an enumeration. Now it's going to be a U16, right? And the reason for that is because now we have that enumeration, but we can also extend what's available in that enumeration. So if we don't actually do this, we're going to have compilation errors, essentially. Or we could run into a situation where we have that. All right, so the other thing, as far as the editor is concerned, I think, let's see, editor set mode has received a small update in its logic. And then we also have get inspector base for mode, which actually I don't think we haven't exposed that. So that really, these are the only three places that actually use it. I guess that's fine. I'm going to mark this as static, so it's obvious. But we used to have a switch statement here that said if you're in this mode, return this control. If you're in this mode, return this control. We don't have that anymore. One thing that we have in the state is now a full array of base mode controls, right? And yes, there are 512 spaces in this array. It's not the end of the world. It's an editor. I'm not that worried about the memory that this occupies, right? It's literally just an array of numbers, right? That's all it is. When we are dealing with the KUI control for the editor, all we have to do is we say state base mode controls mode, and we use the mode as the index into that array, and then that's it. It's as simple as that. We don't have some sort of switch statement that can be broken and have all kinds of weird cases and things like that. If we take a look at editor initialize, I've gone ahead and listed the editor base controls, right? So what was in that switch statement before is now just here. So the first thing that I do is I set invalid KUI control to all of the controls that are in the array, right? So we invalidate everything, and then we go ahead and we say, here's the base controls, or the base mode controls that we know about. So the base sort of panels, right? So the scene inspector, the entity inspector, the tree inspector, the HF terrain, background inspector panel, all those things, right? So those are very easily accessible, and anytime we add a core editor mode, we will add a definition here. and then that will make this automatically work. And then whenever we do editor set mode, essentially what we're going to be doing is we will make a call to that get inspector base 4, and we'll say, if that that control's value is not equal to invalid control, then we'll go ahead and turn off its visibility in active state, and then we'll go ahead and set the new mode. We will go ahead and get the control for the new mode, make sure that the new mode actually has a control, and if it does, turn it on. So make it visible and active, right? And so we may very well have editor modes that don't actually have an inspector window. I can't think off the top of my head what those might be, but we may very well run into a scenario where that's the case. And so this will just kind of support that right out of the box. Okay, so I think that was about as far as I got in terms of editor stuff. So what we are going to do is we have the editor movement system H and C. And so the editor movement system is just the editor specific stuff for the movement system. And then we also have Illumina editor types, right? And I'm separating this out from Illumina types just because this is all editor specific stuff that we are using to extend the editor for Illumina specifically. So here you can see here we've got an enumeration for our editor modes. We only have one declared so far. We're going to have many, many more. But the movement system is basically editor mode user space +1, right? So that gives us, by default, 256, right? And then we also have a structure that holds the editor state for the Illumina movement system, or IMS. And so, this is where we're going to actually store the UI controls for that, as well as some of the other various state information that we need to have for that. So all of those things live there. And then right now we have a single function that is going to be implemented, and this is actually where we're going to kind of start. So we have the Illumina movement system editor integrate. So we have a pointer to the editor and a pointer to the IMS editor state here. And so this function assumes that both of those things already exist. The editor is already stood up, and the IMS editor needs to be stood up. And so that's essentially what we're going to be working on here. So obviously we just do a sanity check to make sure those things exist. And then obviously we'll have to come in here and say, editor register user mode UI control. That is a new function. And did I don't think I actually covered that one. So you know what? I might have actually nuked it. I did. Okay. So let me put this back. All right. And so this is a new function that essentially says, hey, editor, here is a user mode, which that should be U16. Here's the user mode, and here is the base control for it, right? And so that directly fills out an entry into that array that we discussed earlier. So it literally says, So it literally comes in here and says, make sure that the editor mode that's being passed, or the user mode rather, is greater than editor mode. That should be editor mode user space. That would have been a bug. And then just set the base mode controls for that user mode at that user mode index to base control, right? So that's what that does. And so now we actually need to set this stuff up. So I'm going to go to editor init, editor.c rather, and then initialize. And I think I'm going to go ahead and take a look at, we're going to create the editor button first. So within the main window, we're going to go ahead and create that. Let's see, we have the texture browser, which is the last button that's created. And if I recall correctly, we need to create the new button to the right of that. So I'm actually going to copy both of these guys so that I've got their positions, right? And I'm going to come over here. And this is going to be, we're going to say, oops, IMS mode button, okay? So this is going to be editor. Let's see, mode HF terrain. Okay, so actually this is going to be, I think this is going to be IMS editor. Yeah, IMS editor. Mode HF terrain button. So mode IMS button. Okay. The Kohi states. Ooh, we don't have that, do we? Okay. That we can get though, I believe. Systems gets. How did we get that? We get that from the plugin state, the Kohi plugin. Okay, so we'll actually do the same thing here. And actually, I'm probably going to save off a convenience pointer just like I did for the editor. So let's go ahead and just do that real quick. So we want the runtime plugin, Kohi plugin. We want the plugin system, plugin states. Why is that not available? I don't know. We want, let's see. Oh, you know what? Didn't we already have this in the editor state, actually. So Kohi states, Kohi state equals editor Kohi state. Why is that? Why did that not convert to arrow? There we go. Okay. So we have that. Let's bat this out of the way for a second. This is going to be, I'm going to rename this to match. So the font system, this is going to be, we're going to use the editor. Oops. Editor font name, editor font size. And then the label that we're going to use. Let's see. So I guess we could say IMS editor, right? Let's see, kassert, we don't have asserts, so we'll get those. And then we are going to add this as a control to the main GB or BG panel. So that's going to be editor main BG panel. And then we want to do IMS editor mode IMS button, right? And we need to add some additional functionality here. So you can kind of see, like, we have direct access to a lot of different things here, which is one of the reasons I was like, well, we really ought to have some sort of plugin system that exposes an API to us that allows us to sort of add these things programmatically versus kind of directly adding things to the state. But as you can imagine, the effort in the amount of code that's going to be required to do that, it's going to be quite a large surface area, I think. And we haven't even really scaffolded out the editor well enough where I think it's worth doing that at some point. So I think we're going to just kind of continue to sort of extend it this way. And if we, later down the road, when we get closer to 1.0 or something, we'll come back and revisit the editor once we have a lot of the tools in place, and we'll say, okay, how can we make this extensible? How can we, we've got all these features. How can we split them up, make them nicer to deal with, all that stuff. Thank you for this stretch redeem. Ooh, my back popped. That's always nice. Appreciate that. We catch up over on the YouTube side. In the engine, does the descriptor set layouts get built automatically when the shaders are being compiled by reflection, or does the user need to use an API of the engine to build the layouts in the set? So, that answer has changed from the initial design of the engine, but we do not yet use reflection. That is something on the to-do list. We instead have a shader config file, right? And so the shader config file kind of gives us what these things might look like, right? So it gives us our pipelines, what stages we have, what our attributes look like. And then we have this thing called binding sets, and this is ultimately what maps to the descriptors, right? So we can actually say what bindings we have, what level they're at, whether they're global or whatnot, whether they are, how often they're used, how many instances of them are available, and then of course for each descriptor what type it is. So this roughly maps to a descriptor. So we have a storage buffer here. Here we have a texture or an image, and here we have a sampler. We have those separated out instead of combined. So we do actually have that in place. It's just sort of driven by metadata instead of reflection. Because reflection is something I don't want to tackle right now because I don't want to write a reflection system for GLSL because of plans that I have for the future. I guess I'll go ahead and say it now. So the plans I have for the future of this engine is we're not just going to be using Vulkan. We're going to be using Metal as well for Mac OS so that we have, native support for that. And then we're also going to have a direct 3D backend as well. And so we're going to come up with a sort of intermediate shader language that translates to whichever backend that we need, translates to that appropriately. And then that is that sort of top level language is what will be used to drive the reflection of all of those other things. It's kind of nebulous to describe right now because we don't have it yet, but that's sort of the goal. WSys0, hello, how are you doing? From Lake, good to see you as well. Thank you for the positive vibes. I appreciate that. At the point in your series where we switch from edited videos to live streams, can't wait to hear explain Vim and your engine to the raters twice per stream. Woohoo. Yeah. The Vim stuff, I have a link that I literally created for that, so I don't have to explain that all the time. So, yeah. Was A2. How's it going? Everything is good here. Thank you for the well wishes. Appreciate that. Any thoughts on using slang for that? So I don't know. I've loosely looked into slang. It seems like it might be a good idea. But I've not looked into it enough to know whether it's going to be worth doing or not. Part of what we're doing with this engine is 99% of the stuff we're writing from scratch. So already that sort of disqualifies that on some level. There are a couple of exceptions to that. Things like reading image formats. I've moved off into our external tooling via STB image. Reading TrueType font formats, I've exported that to STB font or STB TrueType, I think it was. So there are a couple of places where in our external tooling I've relied on libraries, but I'm trying not to do that in our core engine per se. I am using Shader C to compile the shaders at runtime. But I can kind of consider that part of the Vulkan SDK, so I'm okay with that. So I'm not 100% opposed to it, but I don't know that I'm going to go that route, to be completely honest. I think it might be an interesting exercise to explore, sort of taking an average of the three of those languages and kind of creating our own, coming up with our own sort of abstract syntax for it, and translating that to the three languages. I think that might be an interesting exercise. All right, From Like, well, thank you for stopping by. Appreciate that. Have a good one, and enjoy your sleep. Vincent, yeah. New language, yeah, perhaps, yeah. I was actually joking with somebody in DMs that instead of slang, right, I would call it Kohi language or clang, which is kind of a play on the compiler, but also, Kohi, right? K for Kohi, lang, K lang, clang. I don't know how that's going to pan out, but we'll see. Been using Slang shaders to write my shaders once and then compiled it to whatever backend I need, which has been nice so far. So yeah, so that's the goal, right? Which is why Slang does sound nice. I don't practically know if it's going to fit with this project yet. So I've got to do a little more research on that. And by a little more research, I mean a lot, because I've done almost none. Okay, so we need editor or IMS editor. Mode IMS button, and I'm just gonna do a replace on all of these things. There we go. Okay, so this is gonna be, all right, so this is actually an interesting one. So the last bits of this, and actually, let's see, let's average together these two sizes here. So we do want to keep the X for this one because that's moved to the right, but we want to take the Y from the next one down, so that's going to be 200 here. And this is actually incidentally something I want to address as well. So I've added some to-do items for the future for that. But we have a couple of things to think about here. So up until now, the editor itself has been sort of the context that we pass along to all of these clicked events, right? So we pass along the editor state, and then when we're in the actual handler, we've got the editor state right there available. I think that what we actually need to do is, because I think we're going to actually need both states. I think we're going to need the editor for some stuff, and I think we're going to need the IMS editor for some stuff. I think we need to actually come through here and create another type that sort of groups the two together, that we can treat as sort of the context. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and do type def, and we're going to call this struct, and I'm going to call this I guess this is Illumina editor types, right? So I'm actually going to call this Illumina editor context. And it's not going to be limited to these two editor types. It's going to be whatever other types of editors we have in here for Illumina are going to be included in this as well. So here we're basically going to say, I guess we'll do the struct editor state editor, and then we'll do IMS editor state IMS state, or IMS. I think we called it IMS editor. Right? Maybe we should call this base editor. I don't know. I don't think it's important. So we'll add other bespoke editor states to this as we continue. But the important bit is that we have this Illumina editor context here. So I think the way that we're going to do this, we probably ought to have some sort of something in the state, in the game state, that creates one of these. Right where we stand up sort of the IMS editor state and all this stuff. So I think, now that I think about it actually, what we should probably do instead of passing these, let's pass Illumina editor context instead. Because then we can just kind of fill out the things that we need. So instead of this, we'll just do Illumina editor context, and we'll just say context. Sure. All right. So when we go to here, I'm actually just going to paste this here and take these two here. Let's paste them here, and then extract them appropriately. So we're going to say struct editor editor equals context editor, and then we actually don't need the struct tag here. We can say IMS editor state IMS editor equals IMS editor, right? Why? Oh, we don't have, there we go. Okay. However, since we're saying integrate, we probably ought to go ahead and create that, right? So we'll do context IMS editor equals KLX type. The type is going to be IMS editor state, and then mem tag editor, right? So that way, we kind of stand that up at the same time. And then we can come in here and we can say context or not context editor. And there we go. So now we've got both of those. We just take these as convenience pointers so that our code doesn't have to change here. And now we can actually say size of context and pass context, right? Because wherever this context is created, we'll make sure to have its life cycle be, until the actual editor shuts down. So I'm actually just going to copy pasta this function because it's right here and convenient. We're going to rename that to, we're going to say mode IMS editor button clicked. We're going to take that, put it up here. And we need to also take this and go here with it. All right. So let's see. Let's change up some of this logic. So we're going to say instead of this, we're going to say IMS editor mode button clicked. We'll go ahead and get the, instead of the editor state, we're going to get the Illumina editor context, right, from the user data, because that's what we're storing here. And then all we have to do here is, I don't even think we need this check. We can actually just say editor set mode, right? And we'll say context editor, and then Illumina editor mode movement system, right? We can just pass that along, and then we're good, right? That's a very simple way for us to be able to hook right in and do what we need to do. I think and then we register the main panel as the control. I think that is all we're going to need to do here for now. Obviously, we have to add additional controls, right, for the actual editing functions, for actual editing functions, etc. Right? But at least, this is kind of how that's going to work. So now we can actually come in here to Illumina main. And in the, let's see, app state editor, Illumina editor. Yeah, I think we'll go ahead and store this in the application state. I think that makes sense. However, we're going to have to forward declare this because this doesn't know about that type, right? So we're going to forward declare that up here. So we're going to say struct, and we're going to say IMS editor state. And then we'll come down here and do the same thing. Where was that? Here we go. Struct IMS editor state. And then we'll do IMS editor. Right? I don't think we need to worry about the memory requirement thing. I'm not going to allocate the memory that way. We're just going to allocate it with just our KLEC here. So we add that there, and then we go to our Illumina main. And wherever let's see, where do we actually stand up the editor? Editor initialize, here we go. So we have editor initialize, set up the key maps, set up the bindings. Let's go ahead and also hook in. Wait a minute. Yeah, let's go ahead and hook in the editor extensions for the game specific editors. So obviously that means that we're going to want to call this Illumina movement system editor integrate, which I just realized I foobarred. That is what we should be putting here, not IMS editor. So let's do Illumina editor context. And we'll say, let's do editor context, I guess. Editor context. So what we'll do is we'll say app states editor context equals KLEC type Illumina editor context. Well, I guess that's fine. We'll come back to that. So memory tag editor, and then we'll do app states editor context editor equals app states editor, right? And then we can call Illumina movement system editor integrate, pass along the app states editor context, right? And if that fails, we can bleat about it, right? So failed to initialize the Illumina movement system editor extension. And I guess we could return false. Let's see. Is Spur V the thing to target? I mean, yes and no. Depends. I mean, so there's a lot of things that work with Spur V. Used to be WebGL, but they got stupid about that and made their own thing. So I would probably target Spur V, MSO, which is metal shading language, and yeah, because I can't picture going from our language or slang to OpenGL or GLSL and then to Spur V, right? I think going straight to Spur V is probably the answer there for Vulkan. And then HLSL for Direct 3D. Although Direct 3D can now work with Spur V as well, so I don't know. Diminished, how's it going? Good to see you. Welcome. Glad you have indeed caught me online. I am well, thank you for asking. How about you? What font is that? Reminds me a bit of Courier. This is one... I recently switched to it. Let me see if I can actually remember it. I can't remember the actual dingus name of it. It is... It is... Less Perfect DOS VGA. Is the name of that. I switched to it because it's a heck of a lot easier for me to read, at least. So, I really like it a lot. It's kind of old school. I love it. So, it's a great font. If you Google for it, you can find it out there. There's also a more perfect version of it, which I also have installed. I don't like it as much. It's a bit too spaced out for me. The less perfect is less spaced out, so I like that better. Has that DOS vibe to it, yeah, exactly. Which is, you know, like I kind of, when I started programming, this was kind of the font I was looking at all the time because I was writing code in QBasic back in 1993 or whatever it was, 92, something like that. Thank you for the hydrate redeem. And we'll actually have water for that instead of coffee. Let's see. I've used modern DOS myself, but I think it's actually called Fixed Sys. It used to be called Fixed Sys, yes. But I found that most of the variants of Fixed Sys out there don't actually look good in a terminal like this. Penguin Operator, how's it going, by the way? I meant to say hi and totally missed it for some reason. Good to see you. Just had a dingus moment. I was double checking the width and height of my Wayland window, so the part that resizes the window got ignored. Nice. Yeah, we embrace the dingus-oriented programming around here. All right. Let's see. Do I have... Oh, you know what? There is probably one more thing I ought to check, because I added in editor context this structure here, and I'm pretty sure that probably added an include that I may not necessarily want. Did it? Maybe it didn't. Movement system. No? I guess it didn't. That's actually kind of surprising. Okay. I figured it would have added Illumina editor types, but it didn't. I guess maybe because I forward declared it. Which actually, this probably should be Illumina editor context. Should probably be. Should probably be in here as well. There we go. Okay, let's actually, you know what? We don't need these things. Let's get rid of them. Okay. So, we have our editor context set up. We pass this to there. That will go ahead and set up our state here. All right. I think I've done what I need to do to make this work. This has got some warnings in it. Oh, I think it's just this stuff we're not using. Whoops. Deleted something I needed. All right, apparently we didn't. That must have been getting included through something else. Okay. All right. Let's build. Zone system, unknown type, Illumina nav grid. Really? Okay. That was zone system H, right? So, Illumina nav grid, why are you not known? Oh, because again, I don't know why that wouldn't have been included, but okay. Sure. Okay. So let's go ahead and run this and see what we get. It should just be a button and then a blank window. So there's the editor button. And a segfault. Sweet. So why did we segfault? Self value equals 0. That is not right. Okay. So let's trace this back. Set mode. Oh, wait a minute. So if the state mode is 256, I probably need to put a breakpoint on that, if I'm honest. Let's restart this, which is kind of annoying. But I'm pretty sure I just missed something stupid. Dingus-oriented programming for the win. Okay, so we launch this, open the editor, bat that out of the way, go to the new thing. State mode is 256. Okay, so that's what we do expect. That is the code that we've passed here. So that's correct. Let's see. Let's take a look at the base control. So this does look correct. Is the context correct? I think it is, more or less. 2621. Yeah, okay. Okay, so I don't think we've lost anything there. All right, so state mode. Oh, we've already set that here, so I don't know what it was before. So now we need to get inspector base for mode. So that should be at index 256, which I'm not gonna scroll through that. Let's actually just do this. And we'll do 256 because we know that's what it is. Did we not register this thing here? Oh. We didn't actually create it yet. Dingus. Dingus, dingus, dingus. All right. Speaking of dingus-oriented programming, we were just talking about that. Okay, so what we actually need to do is go to editor C, initialize. I'm going to go to the bottom of this function because that has stuff that I can use to copy pasta. So texture browser, I don't really want to use that. I think I can use, okay, maybe I shouldn't have gone to the bottom. Let's use this, right? So I'm going to take the first couple parts of this, and we're going to duplicate that because I think we can use this as a base for creating the new window, right? So what the problem is, rather, is I created the button to enter the mode, and then I registered a control, which I had not yet created, as the base control for that mode, which is bad for obvious reasons. So now that the dingus-oriented programming is out of the way, I need to look really quickly and see. Let's see, we have panel width, panel right call X. Okay. And then main panel, title, save button, recount button. Okay. So we don't care about anything except for the panel and maybe the title at the moment. So I'm just going to do, actually I could just do IMS editor. And then here we can do, crap, what did I say those were? Main panel. Panel width, panel right call X, and then main panel. Yeah, okay. So the name for this, I'm just going to call this IMS main panel. The panel creates, obviously we need to include that, and then this is going to be IMS editor, and this is going to be panel width. And I'm going to leave the dimensions right now pretty much the same as what we have for the HF terrain, because it's really only supposed to be a reference. We can fine-tune this stuff later. Okay, so the editor root, the state editor root, this is going to be editor root. So we are adding this panel to the editor root. And then we want to say, let's actually do IMS editor, and we'll do main panel. And that way we can actually just do this right like that. And then we can do IMS editor and panel width right there. And then window label. So what did we call that? Did we just call it title, I think? Yeah, title. So this is going to be IMS editor title. We're going to do IMS editor title. Actually, we already have title in there. Go ahead and include that. And then this is going to be editor, font name, editor, font size. And then we want, I think we can actually spell it out. Illumina move system editor. And then here we can do IMS editor main panel. And here we actually just need to do one more time IMS editor Title. And that's going to be the same for that. Okay. So we create the new panel, we add it to the editor root, and then we add a window label to that. Now we should have everything that we need. Okay, let's try that again. Oh. Get rid of that breakpoint. Okay, so we'll go into the editor. There we go. Okay, its position's a little bit weird, but we can work with that. That's fine. I think that gets like auto resized whenever we resize the window. It should get like automatically repositioned. So I'm pretty sure the other ones do that. Yeah. So we just don't have this one hooked up to that. That is something we're going to have to hook up. But for now, we at least have the ability to sort of switch in between those modes. So we can see that we have the button there. Click, that switches the mode appropriately for us. Looks like it does not hide the window in all cases, though. Oh, because the texture browser is in a mode. I guess that's why. So these are modes. That's just the texture browser. I should probably move that to somewhere else so it's obvious that that's like not a mode. I'm not going to worry about it for now, though. All right, so this is where we're going to now add the buttons to do things like recalculate our height, right? Or rescan the scene for height updates. So the usefulness of that is going to be, if we add something or remove something, like let's say, for example, we wanted to go into editing mode and choose this cube, if I can actually choose it. Light's in the way. And move it over here, right? I would want the ability to say recalculate this. Now, in an ideal situation, you could probably just manually edit that and it'd be much, much, much quicker. But maybe you've made other updates to it and you just want to go ahead and recalculate that. We should have the ability to do that. So that is where this guy would come in. Let's see. Orshi and Psycode, good to see you guys. How have you guys been? Hope you're doing well. Let's see. Downloaded the font, but man, I hate how fonts are managed. Tried to make... Oh, hang on a second. The old VS to use the font, but no luck. Don't know what is the magical piece of text I need to type for the family. It's not just...
You dingus.
It's not just this for the font family. Of course, if you're on Windows, that might be different. Let me try it. Let me see. What is the... Do I even have font set in here? No, I don't. Let's see. I guess I could try... what is it? Workbench font? Workbench editor... What is the font family? Editor font family. Here we go. So in here I would just do, I guess, what is it? Less perfect DOS VG8. And in fact, it actually picked it right up. That's interesting. So save that. In the infamous dev speak works on my machine. So yeah, my get's up. I'm not sure what you're missing there. Tried to use the MD base panel, didn't use the JSON editor. Oh, okay. Maybe that's it, right? We can test that. Let me get rid of that. Switch this back, and then do user settings, and then editor font family. And I'm just going to put this right in the front. Still worked. Yeah, so I'm not sure what's happening there. It's a lot of text for a font. Yeah, I mean, I might just leave that there, actually. That font looks pretty decent in here, too. At least until I come up with a different debugger, so I don't have to look at this pile of poop anymore. But anyway, let's see. It's fair if explored using slang a little since they joined the Kronos group, and I think it could at least be a good resource to read for in helping implement your own system. Yes, that's true. Yeah, at the very least, I could use it as an example, either of what to do or what not to do, depending on how it's written. I guess time will tell. Okay. So, the first thing that I want to get in here, if we go back to our movement system, to-do list, probably is going to be this guy, right? So include a button to regenerate the height info. Should not overwrite manually set flags, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so we can look at that second requirement. But I think there's actually two buttons we need to put in. We need a save button, right? We need some way to save this. Which that's kind of happening for us automatically right now. But, we need a way to... We shouldn't assume when we regenerate this that we want to save it. Because maybe we regenerate that and we go, oh crap, I didn't really want to do that. Throw that change out. So, let's see. So, in here, let's see, we have the create, generate navgrid geometry, and generate navgrid minmax. So, these are the two functions that do pretty much all the work. So min-max is basically, well, actually, wait a minute. No. That's not 100% true. We need to, where is scan navgrid? There it is. That's the other one I was looking for. That's the one that does all the work, right? So scan navgrid is going to be the one that we're going to want to run. But then we're also going to want to do generate min-max, right? Because that is going to go through and generate the minimum and maximum height diffs for all of the cells. And then here's where we regenerate the navgrid geometry. And so it's going to be a combination of these things that we actually want to do when we want to recalculate it, right? So I think what I'm going to do is actually go to, let's see, asset from binary, destroy, okay, so probably after, do we want to do separate from the asset stuff, I think. We'll do it after destroy. All right, so we'll do return type void Illumina navgrid recalculate is what we're going to call it, right? So Illumina nav grid. Oops. And we're just going to pasta those right in there, right? Now, this does need the scene because we do actually have to scan in the scene, right? So let's see. I guess we should probably call this scan and recalculate, right? So we need scene. Was it not? Oh, right. That's an opaque type. Forgot about that. Okay. So we have that. And then outgrid is just going to be grid. And then we're not going to do any of the clock stuff. That's just for initial load. And honestly, I'm going to wind up taking some of that stuff out. That was just kind of trying to figure out how long all this stuff takes. So we generate min-max data. So this is again just going to be grid. This is again going to be grid. And then we probably ought to throw out the min-max data. So the min-max data is basically just... Actually, we don't even have to generate... Why are we... Right. Generates an array of these. Okay. So we actually just need to do... a free of the min-max data so that we don't... leak that. And then... we're actually going to have to do something a little different here. So we have this renderer geometry upload that we had before. And so we're going to have to update this geometry, but we don't necessarily need to re-upload it in its entirety. So I think we had renderer geometry vertex update, right? And so what vertex update does is it takes the geometry and it takes an offset vertex count, the vertices, and whether or not it should be included in the framework load. So I'm trying to remember what the right call is with include in framework load. I feel like that should be abstracted from the renderer front end. So the offset is 0, grid, geometry, vertex count, and then I think it's just vertices. So we have grid, geometry, vertices, and then I'm going to say false for include in framework load. And then we can just return here. So we're going to say Illumina navgrid failed to re-upload to GPU. And actually, you know what? That doesn't even have a fail case. Right? It's either going to work or it's not. And if it doesn't work, we don't bleat about it. I think the renderer reports something internally and then it just kind of moves on. So re-upload geometry to GPU. That might be everything that we need to do. I feel like I'm missing a step or two in there, but let's go ahead and go to... We'll first go to the header file, and we'll get that in there, and then I'm actually going to copy this and go to movement, editor movement system. And we're going to come down here, and I'm actually going to set up all of this stuff in another button click event for a button we haven't created yet, but the function signature is going to look remarkably similar. So we're just going to take this and come in here. and we are going to include the movement system, and we'll take the context editor. Don't we have... Don't we have the scene? Do we not have the current scene? I thought we did. Edit scene. There it is. And then Illumina nav grid. So that's going to be... where's the pointer for that? Context. That's stored by the zone system. So I think we might not actually have... We might not actually have that. So zone system... Zone system states. I guess I could do... I'm going to need a way to get the application state, actually. Which is something we probably ought to have in here anyways. Come to think of it. Because that is how we are going to get the... the grid. Let's see. And that should be the nav grid technically, but I don't think. Nav grid is not there. That to do is interesting too. That probably should be done here versus by the zone system. See, because we can get it this way. Zone states, current zone. So the state is the game state, right? So that's going to be application state. So, all right, let's do this. Let's say, even higher level than this, struct application state. And we're going to say app. Right? So now we'll be able to say, let's see, this is going to be context app, which we're not going to have the... What do we need for that? Illumina types? Yeah. Include Illumina types. All right. Now we can say zone states. Oh, I don't have that either. Include systems zone system. Zone states, current zone, nav grid. So that's going to be Illumina nav grid. So we'll say Illumina nav grid equals address of this guy. Okay. Now we can say grid here. right? We probably had to have a much easier way to actually pull that up, but for now, that will work. Okay. So when we click this, we essentially want to kick off this whole process, which this is the thing I was talking about. Maybe we could Jobify, right? But then again, do we really want you to be able to sort of move around and do other things while that's happening? Probably the only thing we do is show some sort of status bar anyway. So I don't know that there's a whole lot of value in that, but could Jobify this and show a blocking progress bar. Maybe I'll put a to-do on it and leave it there. All right, so button clicked. Let's do scan and recalc button clicked, right? So that's that. I think we need a static definition up here. Okay, and we are going to add a button to the window here. All right, so this is just going to be a very quick rescan and calculate button. Do we actually have, yeah, recalc button. Right, so I'm just going to go through here and just change these guys real fast. And we're going to do IMS recalc button is what we'll call that. Scan recalc. That might be too long for the button, but that's fine. Okay, so we're going to attach it to, instead of the editor main BG panel, we're going to do IMS editor main panel. And then this is going to be the recalc button. All right. So let's see. Set the width to 115. I think we could actually we can do a 200 width on that. That's fine. Let me look at really quickly, actually. Well, yeah, it doesn't matter. The positioning doesn't really matter all that much. We'll put this, I guess, right below the title. So the title is 10 and then -5, and then it's going to occupy, say, 40 pixels of space or so. So I'm going to put this 10 over, and then I'll put this at like 50. All right, and then the last one is going to be scan and recalculate button clicked. Is going to be the handler for that, and the context is going to be the same thing that we passed through. So now, in theory, if all of this is hooked up correctly, it should regenerate. Now, I'm not expecting this to work 100%. That probably seg-faulted because I was running it. Not surprised. Let me just rebuild that again, make sure everything got overwritten. We shall see. I do know that this generation takes a long time, so let's see first of all if the button even shows. It does. Okay. So now we should be able to do something like I don't know. Well, you know what? I'm gonna do it without actually moving anything and see what we get. Okay, so we have a seg fault. Current zone state, app. Oh, because I didn't, dingus. All right. Let me see. So I didn't actually do application initialize. I thought was where I put that. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, here. So this needs to be app state editor context. Ironically, app equals app. Oh, it's application. I want application state, app state. Reminds me of something funny. I was on a video call and I had good old VS open as my debugger on the screen, and my boss told me that I shouldn't have obscene materials open at work. That's hilarious about them. I love that that's like transcended to work environments, and enough people have heard about it that it has gone that far. It's very funny to me. Absolutely NSFW. Yep, 100%. Okay, let's see. Did I build? I think I did. All right, let's build this again. Let's see what kind of dingery we can come up with here. So we'll open the editor, and we'll just go to this mode, recalculate. And you can see here, it's processing. So we get that same sort of update. Okay, interesting. So it's buggered something, for sure. It technically works, but works wrong. So obviously something's gone terribly wrong with the memory in this thing somewhere. So I'm wondering if it exceeded the bounds of the geometry somehow. It shouldn't have resized. It should be the same size geometry. That's curious. Oh, you know what, though? This is interesting over here, too. Because, look, it stops here. And we only have stripes going in one direction. So if we come over here, this is near the origin of the scene. We can see that the geometry... Oh, it's like overlapped. That's interesting indeed. So how would a geometry update have done that? So when we go ahead and do this, the interesting thing is it didn't crash, which is kind of what I was half expecting it to do. So we got the grid. Obviously, all of this was hooked up correctly. So we did the scan. I'm not thinking that the scan is actually wrong. This seems purely like a... Oh. Generate navgrid geometry. I wonder, are we... Yeah, we're actually making new... We're actually making new geometry here. Which, theoretically, the indices should be the exact same. The vertices should be the same. Oh, wait a minute though. We are using color vertex 3Ds. I'll bet it's not the same. Because I'll bet I'll bet there's an assumption being made somewhere in here about the vertex size. Right, so we have grid geometry, which is weird that it takes these as separate arguments, but then also takes the geometry itself. It should probably just take... Well, no, I guess if we're only updating some of the vertices, that's when we'd want that. So, okay, I guess that does make sense. Okay, so when we do this, load range, size. Where are we actually getting size from? Vertex element size. What are we setting as the vertex element size when we create the grid's geometry? So we have color, we're using color vertex 3D here. Color vertex 3D. I thought for sure that could be it. Let's see. So buffer offset. Oh, that's a problem too. We are resetting the buffer offset. So you'd only ever want to do that on an initial upload. Yeah, vertex buffer offset right there. Okay, that is definitely actually what's clobbering it. 100%. Although this is like max. How did that even do the thing without actually crashing? Did we get any... Oh, I don't have validation on, do I? Bin... That's just some loading library stuff. Okay, so... Okay, well, there's definitely some stuff going on in here that shouldn't be. This makes it count as a new geometry upload versus an existing one. And then this and this are just wrong. So I think what we need to do is we need to modify this into... We probably ought to have a generate and a regenerate. And then both of those feed into a function that switches based on whether it's new or not. Generate. Because like generate navgrid geometry is good for what it's doing currently. But it's not what we want when we go ahead to recalculate it. We want like a regenerate. So let's do this. We'll have a generate and a regenerate using min-max data. And then we'll also have a internal generate navgrid geometry. So this internal is going to be the one that we have here. That's going to say is new, right? And that one ought to probably have that up here too. Is new. And then, whoops, let me actually grab these two guys. And we can put these guys down here. And all we have to do is internal generate nav grid geometry. So grid min max data true, and then literally the same thing. Oh, I'm gonna return that. Literally, we want the same thing there, except false, right? Whoops, and then here, actually, it looks like I already kind of took some of this into account. So up here is fine, right? It's saying if it's already there, use it. If it's not, then don't. So I already took that into account. That's fine for those two. This probably ought to have a fix me on it. Well, actually, no, that's not determined here. Never mind. All right, that's fine. Let's see. Okay, so create all those. Okay, so really the biggest switch is going to be down here. So if is new, then we want this. Otherwise, we want out geometry generation plus equals 1. Or plus 1, I guess it would be. Yeah. Extents we can go ahead and recalculate. Center we can go ahead and recalculate. Vertex element size, that's fine. Vertex count's fine. Verts is fine because that would have been pulled from the appropriate place. This is going to be, let's actually take both of these and put them together, and we'll say if is new, then we want to do this. Otherwise, we're just not going to change them at all. All right. I think that might be... I still feel like I'm missing something, but... All right. So... that's actually it for this. We need movement editor. Edit. Wait, is it? Editor movement system. There we go. Couldn't think of the dingest name. All right, so scan and recalculate. We want to regenerate geometry. And then when we update this, we should be good to go. I may also have to change this to true. We'll have to see. You know what? Let me just go ahead and do that. I don't think that's the problem, but I think the worst thing that's going to have is if we don't include it in the frame workload, we may wind up having some read-write hazards, but I think that's going to be the worst of it. Okay, so this is probably where we're going to wind up leaving off. Oh, cool. Seg fault. Neat. Okay. What does it not like? It's got the handle. Source stage, destination stage, memory barrier. Oh, right. Right, this is the include and framework load thing. Okay, yeah, that should be off. I think I need to actually remove that from being exposed to the front end. I don't think that's something that we ever need to switch outside of the context of the renderer. Okay. This is one of the reasons I was saying maybe Javifying it makes sense, because this does take a minute, and I have a relatively fast machine here, so on a slow machine that's going to take a minute. Okay, that looks to have fixed it. Although I could be mistaken, but I think that's rendering twice now. It looked like the whole grid got brighter, which is going to be a problem. So let me actually prove that theory. Oh, interesting. So now it's actually taking into account these spheres, which it wasn't before. That's actually pretty funny. So you can actually see that that's brand new geometry. That's actually kind of hilarious. But that goes right into what I was saying about the ND flags. It looks like it's calculated freaking everything, which is kind of hysterical. All right, so if I take now, let's take, I don't know, this guy. Let's go to entity here. And we're going to move him here. Right, maybe away from everything else. We'll move it over here, right? And we'll go back to the editor, and we'll scan and recalculate again. What we should see is we should see this section over here drop, and we should see this section over here pick up. And it does. So, cool. That works. We can literally cross that off the list. I wasn't sure we were going to get that done tonight, but it's right at the end of stream time, and we got it done, which is freaking awesome. So, we don't have a save yet. That's fine. We can definitely do that in the near future. Let me go ahead and put in here. So I'm gonna modify this, I think. So height regeneration should only overwrite manually set flags unless told to do so. If told to do so. Right. So part of that we can't actually do yet. So we have no way to test that yet. Because manually set flags are going to be like when we have our editor to set something as blocked explicitly. We want to say basically whenever we generate the height information from scanning the scene, we don't want that to change no matter what. And that could just be a flag that we pass into regen. And so I'm going to leave that on there as a separate item because that is going to require this grid cell movement type, right? So we're going to need that, which is also that. So I kind of feel like it's kind of both. But anyway, Awesome. So we accomplished what we're going to, or what I wanted to accomplish for the night. I don't know. Yeah, I probably will wait to push this. Actually, is there even anything? Yeah, there is some stuff in the editor. Let's see. Oh, I did add some stuff to the to-do list, by the way. Some additional things I want to add in the next version for the UI. Let's see. So we added... Oh, it looks like a bunch of formatting got fixed. That's... Sure, that's fine. I love when that happens. That's my favorite. Yeah, it's almost all formatting. Oh, that's really annoying. Why has it done that? All right, well, that's gonna have to be fine. All right, so, formatting. Also, extended editor to accept user modes controls. And then up here, it's going to be kind of the same thing. So this is going to be, actually, you know what I should probably do? Oh, staged. I think this is just the movement system editor stuff. Yeah, okay. Get commits, movement system editor, scaffold, recalc, scan, scene for nav grid logic. Boom. All right. So that's pretty good progress for tonight, I think. Let me just make sure I'm not missing any chats here. What is Shadows of Illumina about? Can you share details, or would it be spoilers? I don't think there's anything out there that's spoiler worthy yet. We're actually still very early days in the design phase of it, but essentially it's going to be an action RPG. And I've got a bunch of lore written up on it and stuff here. Let's see. I actually have a whole bunch of stuff here written in a Google Doc about a whole bunch of different zones and things, and I'm scrolling through this really fast because it's 41 pages. That is not open for viewing, but there is this website, and I'll drop a link here. It's still very much under construction, still very much early days. But there is a wiki that I've started putting together that has some of the history and like stuff about the world in here. I do actually have a map on here, which takes a minute to load because it's gigantic. So there's been some world design in terms of the map. It's still very much in progress, but there's that. There's the wiki. There's some things there to look through. A lot of this is still very, very, very early days. So a lot of this stuff isn't filled out yet, but there's some stuff in there about the lore, about some history, things like that. In terms of features and stuff, that stuff isn't in here yet. Eventually it will be. But yeah, it's going to be a 3D isometric action RPG. Yeah, that's all I can really say about it at the moment. I've got a bunch of ideas in my head and otherwise in journals and stuff, but it's not stuff that I can fully go public with yet. Will the lore be open source? Yeah, I mean the lore will be in the wiki. So it'll be available in here as I sort of write it. However, I think what might wind up happening with this is I may eventually, once I start making some large progress beyond the first, what you might consider a demo or something like that. Once I start getting to the point where there's actually going to be spoilers, I may lock this down again until the release of the game. But for right now, it's open. So once the game releases, of course, this wiki will be available. For any questions you have in the game, all that stuff, all the design, all that stuff will be in here. But yeah, at least for now it's open. I don't know that's going to stay that way, but feel free to go in there and poke around. All right. With that said, I am past time, so I do need to find somebody to raid. So let me look there. While I do that, I just want to say a large thank you to you guys who joined me tonight. I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys. And I would also appreciate, if you haven't already, if you can toss me a follow on Twitch or a sub on YouTube. I would greatly appreciate it. I am trying to grow both of those channels. So any and all follows definitely help me out a ton. And if this project is something that seems like it would be interesting to you, I highly encourage you to follow along. We are building the entire thing from scratch. So, yeah. Let's see. I'm hoping to find somebody that's doing something similar to what we're doing here, but I don't know that I'm going to be able to do that. Because it doesn't seem like... All right, I think what I'm going to do this time... let's see. All right, we're going to raid Moonwood Games. Let me set that up for the YouTube side, because I can actually do that over here, because he does stream to both. If I can remember where the heck the button is for that. It's under here, I think. Here we go. They bury it on the YouTube side. I don't know why they do that. Let's see. Is it customization? Here we go. They call it redirecting. All right, cool. So we're going to redirect on the YouTube side, and we're going to raid on the Twitch side. Anyways, thank you guys so much for joining me. I really appreciate you guys. And we will see you guys in the next stream. Have a good one. I will talk to you guys later. See ya.